Good morning. We're going to move on to 10.2, interest-bearing bank accounts and inflation. Okay, so when we're talking about an interest-bearing account, we're talking about an account that a bank will pay you interest. In most cases, if you have a checking account and or a savings account, they will pay you some interest. It's usually a relatively low rate, but interest rates paid on these accounts have vary from or will vary from less than 1% per year to as much as 5% per year. Usually it depends on the balance that you have, how much money you have in the account. Usually that's the criteria. So to find the interest compounded daily, the formula that you would use is the maturity value is equal to the principal, open parentheses, 1 plus I to the power of n. Now, the difference between what this is compared to what we already learned, because it's the same formula, is how we treat I. The annual interest rate, whatever is publicized by the institution, divided by 365 days in a year, that will be your I. So this is going to be a lot smaller than what we normally have seen. And n is still the number of days. Well, before it could be years, it could be months, but for sure, it could be days, and we know that already, but for sure, when we're talking about daily interest, n is the number of days. Now, because the I gets a little bit more complicated than normal, then we do like to use tables a little bit more frequently. Here's an example here, interest by quarter for 3.5% compounded daily, assuming 90-day quarters. So the factor here, which is really this formula here that we have, that's what the factors are, really figuring out the more complex element of the computation, are listed there. And we're going to see some examples in the next few problems or pages. So finding compound amount and interest, we're going to take the compound amount is equal to the principal times the number from the table. So this is the example. And then whatever that interest is going to be equal to the compound amount minus the principal. So in essence, we're going to get a future value here, which is the m. And then we're going to take the compound amount minus the original principal, and that's going to give us the amount of interest. Here's a listing of the table for 3.5%, and the number of days listed all the way down. So we don't really have to do much on computations. We're just using a lookup table again. Becky Gonzalez receives $12,500 from a divorce settlement. She plans to use the money for a down payment on a new Toyota Camry, but decides to wait 60 days until the new models are out. She puts her money in a savings account earning 3.5% interest compounded daily for the 60 days. Find the amount of interest she will earn. So you can go ahead and press on pause and see if you can figure this one out. But the tables are right here. And when we look at it, we're going to simply look at the table. We know it's 3.5% now. The tables are so complex that you're going to really have to have a table for every specific interest rate, which is a bit tough. We're just using rounded numbers like 3.5 or 3.5%, but we're just going to consistently just use 3.5%. Okay, so since we've got the table for 3.5%, we can really figure this one out. So in 3.5% compounded daily for 60 days. So we're going to scroll down till we get to 60 days. Where's 60 days? Here it is. So the factor is 1.005769730. That's the factor. We're going to take the principal amount, $12,500, multiply it by that number, and we'll get the maturity value, which is $12,572.12. And to find the interest, we just take the difference between the two. The next example, let's see, Tom Blackmore is a private investigator who keeps his extra cash in a savings account to earn interest. On January 10th, he deposited $2,463 in a savings account paying 3.5% compounded daily. He deposited an additional $1,320 on February 18th and $840 on March 3rd. Find the interest earned through April 10th. So what you really have here are 3 deposits and 3 separate computations. Now, all of them are paying 3.5%, but all of them are for a different number of days. So the trick here is going to be figuring out, well, how many days did that amount of money stay in the account? We have to figure out how many days are there between January 10th and April 10th. Go ahead and pause at any point. You can just try to figure it out and then we can work together. But I'll go ahead and keep going. So on January 10th, he deposited $24.63. Let's figure that out. January 10th to April 10th, we've got to figure out how many days there are. Now, we've done this so many times now, I'm not going to worry about going through the process. But the number of days, let's see, 24.63 was in the account for 90 days. It was on January 10th, so it was 21 days in January. There's 31 days minus the 10 gives you 21. 28 days in February, 31 days in March, and 10 days in April. So we've done this a number of times. We don't have to go through the computations. It was 90 days. So we're going to look at the table for 90 days on 3.5%. Let's find the factor for 90 days. 1.008666767. Right there. Conveniently, it's at the end of the table. So that's going to be the factor we use. We multiply it by 24.63. We get the total amount, the maturity value, and then we subtract the difference so that we can understand how much interest we earned. Oh, it just the interest earned through. So, okay, I guess what we're going to do is just take this one at a time. So we're going to figure out what that is. We're going to figure out the second amount, which is the same process, looking on the table. That's 1326.47. The compound interest for 840 is the same process, looking on the table, the number of days, 843.07. We're going to add all of this up, 4653.89. So those are the maturity values for all 3 deposits. Here is kind of a summary to do this on a schedule here. We did the first deposit, the second deposit, the third deposit. We're going to sum it all up. And rather than finding the difference in each individual account, which makes sense, it'll be more efficient to do it this way, we're going to add this all up, subtract all the deposits, and the difference is what the account has earned in interest. So $30.89. He looks a little bit suspicious, doesn't he? I wonder what he's looking for. I guess that's why he's a private investigator. That's Tom. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so on the next problem, Beth Gardner owns Blacktop Paving Incorporated. She needs a place to keep extra cash, a place that will earn interest, but that will allow her to get funds when she needs it or when it's needed. She opened a money market account on July 20th with a $24,800 deposit. She then withdrew $3,800 on the 29th for an unexpected truck repair. And she made another withdrawal on $820 on September 29th for payroll. Find the interest earned through October 1st, given the interest at 3.5%. Okay, so you got a feel for how to do the computations. The only little trick to this is figuring out, well, the balance is changing every time, and there's a number of ways we can do this. I think that the way that the textbook comes up with the suggestion, I think this is a good way of doing it. It's probably one of the more easier ways of doing it. So we're going to start with the amount that we know was in the account the whole time between July 20th and October 1st. We'll first figure out how many days that is. That's 73 days. We're then going to find out what the factor we're going to need for this is 1.007024219. That's in the table that we could look up. And then what we had in the account, well, we started off with a $24,800 deposit. Then we subtracted 38 and then 8,200. So we were left with 12,800, and that stayed in the account the entire time. So we have that amount, that factor. We're going to multiply $12,800 times the 1.007024219, the factor, and we come up with a maturity value of $12,889.91. We can then subtract the original deposited amount, or the amount that we know stayed inside the account the whole time, 12,889.91, minus the 12,800, which we computed up here. And on that $12,800, we earned $89.91. And then from here on, we just focus on the actual withdrawals and for how long they were in the account. We know we made the entire deposit on July 20th, but we withdrew $3,800 on August 29th. So between July 20th and August 29th, that $3,800 was there. Let's figure out how much interest we earned on that $3,800. Well, but first, before we do that, we're going to figure out how many days. And we do the computations, and we end up with 40 days between that period of time. Now we look up on the table, 40 days at 3.5%. The factor is, that's the factor. We're going to take that factor, multiply it by $3,800, and we come up with the maturity value of $3,814.60. We subtract from that the original deposit of $3,800, so $3,814.60 minus the $3,800, that gives us $1,460. Let's scroll down just a bit. And then finally, the last deposit that was made, or rather the last withdrawal that was made, was $8,200 on September 29th. And we figure out how many days that was between when the account opened and when the withdrawal occurred. So 71 days between July 20th and September 29th. We look on the table, find the factor, multiply the factor times the compound amount. We end up with 8256.02. We subtract the withdrawal amount, 8,200, and that the interest we earned was 56.02. So we're going to take the 89.91 that we earned on the amount that stayed there the whole time, 14.60 on the amount that was withdrawn, the $3,800 that was withdrawn, and then $56.02 on the $8,200 that was withdrawn. We're going to add those up, and we're going to come up with a total amount of interest of 160.53. We have our total deposit, $24,800. We're going to add to that $160.53. That's the amount of interest we earned. Then subtract the withdrawals, and that's going to give us the balance, which is what we were asked to find, is what was the balance at the end of the period. It was $12,960.53. The next page, we go on to look at time deposits. Often, time deposits are really a deposit that's made that you are locked in for a given number of days. And when I say locked in, that doesn't mean you can't take the money out. But if you do take it out before the time period expires, it's almost like a promise. I promise to keep this money in the bank account for so many days. If you take the money out before then, you can do that, but you're going to end up paying a bit of a penalty. And so a time deposit is often referred to as a certificate of deposit, or CD. So often people use extra cash or idle cash that they have in their bank accounts, and they put them as a CD, certificate of deposit. Here is a table for number of years for time deposit accounts compounded daily. So we're getting an abbreviated table here so that we can use it for specific problems. And the good news is it's pretty easy once we just use the lookup tables. Tony Sanchez plans to purchase tools for his auto repair shop. Bank of America requires $20,000 in collateral before making the loan. Therefore, Tony deposits $20,000 with the bank in a 2-year certificate of deposit yielding 2% compounded daily. Find the amount and the interest, yielding 2% compounded daily for 2 years. Well, go ahead and pause and try to solve, or you can just follow with me. 2%, 2 years, 2 years, 2%. Here's the factor, 1.04080,963. The amount deposited was $20,000. We're going to multiply that by the factor. We'll come up with a maturity value of $20,816.49. We subtract the original deposit of $20,000 and we learn that he actually earns $816.19. Now, the other thing it says, we could have used the compounding interest as well. PM, the maturity value, is equal to P, the principal, open parentheses, 1 plus I, close parentheses, to the power of n. But we have to remember that the I has to be converted to number of days, so it's 2% divided by 365. So the actual formula, the way you would write it out, would be 20,000 multiplied by open parentheses 1 plus 0.02 divided by 365, close parentheses, and then 730. 730 comes from the number of days that it's sitting in the deposit. So 365 times 2, 2 times 365 is 730. That's 365 days in a year times 2 years, 730 days. Run the numbers, do the computation, you'd end up with the same amount than what was used on the table. In fact, this factor, if you haven't already figured it out, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, this factor is really this computation here. The next concept is about inflation and the consumer price index. And inflation results in a continual rise in the price of goods and services. So you can look at it in two different ways. The price of goods go up or the value of your dollar goes down. The dollar is worth less each year. And it's important to take inflation into consideration because you may be getting additional dollars in the future thinking that you're getting more money, but in fact your buying power is actually going down. For example, if you get a raise of 5%, but the inflation rate, meaning the cost of general merchandise, has gone up by 6%, then really you've lost buying power. And if you've lost buying power, then I guess you haven't become any wealthier than you were before. In fact, you've become less wealthy because you're not able to buy these goods and services that you were before. So inflation can't be ignored. It's part of our daily lives. The CPI for California over the last, I don't know, for quite a long time has been relatively low. I'm going to say maybe 10 years. Let's see, 20, yeah, since 10, maybe 10 years, but it's somewhere hovering usually between 2 to 3%, something like that. So it's relatively low. So we'll take a look. Inflation from one year to the next is 3% as measured by the CPI. Find the effect of the increase on a family with an after-tax annual income and budget of $39,600, that's after taxes. And then what is the overall effect of the family member receives only a 1% after-tax increase paid for the year? So go ahead and pause and figure out what inflation is and the value is on that $39,600. Okay, you can pause. Okay, so if you either are still with us or you just came back from pausing and trying to solve it, let's take a look. First, we're going to take the $39,600 and multiply it by 3%. Since this is going to be more like simple interest, we're just looking at for 1 year. 0.03 multiplied by 39,600, that's $1,188. That means what cost $39,600 before now costs $40,788 because of the inflation. We just take the increase of 3%, 39,600 plus the increase of 3%, and that gives us, so whatever they purchased or paid for in the last year now costs $40,788. Now, if, let's say, the income earners of the family, they get a 1% increase after taxes. Well, if they had $39,600 before, they're going to add 1% to that. So that's $396, right? We're going to add the $396 to the $39,600, and we're going to get $39,999. Now we'll compare, this is the amount of money more that they're making this year compared to last year. But we're going to compare that to the the inflation amount, or the inflated amount, what occurred for inflation. So $40,788, that's the inflation amount, inflationary amount, that's the 3% increase, minus the 1% increase of $39,996. You could argue that they've actually lost buying power, so they've lost wealth. Their wealth has gone down by $792. You'll find that many negotiating, like union type negotiators, often use this as a basis for increases on their workers, saying, look, the inflation rate went up by 3%. If you just give us a 3% increase, they've gained no wealth. They're not any wealthier than they were before. They're not getting any reward. So you need to give them something more than 3% in order for them to feel rewarded. Okay, let's move on to the next. Joan Stringer has $48,500 in a retirement account. It is invested in a CD. Let me move this over a bit. It's invested in a CD at a bank that pays 2% per year, compounded daily during a year when the CPI increases 2.7%. Find the gain or loss in purchasing power. Now, this is exactly like the previous example, with the difference now is rather than using the straight percentages now, because we have a compounding interest element, we're going to go ahead and use the tables that we've had before. So go ahead and pause and try to solve, or continue with me. To solve this problem, we're going to go ahead and look on the compound interest for time deposit accounts daily table on page 387, and using 2% as the rate, we can figure out that the factor is 1.020200078. You can go back to the table and confirm, but that should be straightforward. Now, compound amount is equal 48,500. That was the amount that was originally deposited in the retirement account. We're going to multiply it by the factor. And so the increased amount would be $49,479.34. Now we know that the inflation rate went up by 2.7%. To figure out how much money we would need to earn to at least have the same buying power, we're going to compute what that inflation amount is. So 48,500 multiplied by 1.027. Now, you might be asking, well, where does the 1 come from? Well, if we just wanted to compute the amount of interest, we would just use 0.027. And then we would 48,500 multiplied by 0.027, that would give us the amount of interest, but then we'd have to turn around and add that to the original amount, 48,500 plus the interest, to give us the total amount, right? In this case, why do two computations when you can multiply the original amount by 1.027? If you think about it, it makes sense. 1 represents the 48,500, the original amount, and 0.027 is the increase. So 48,500 times 1.027 will give us $49,809.50. This is the impact on the inflation, or the inflation rate impact on dollars. So we can already see that the inflation amount is actually higher than what the time deposit interest earn is. We'll take the difference between the two, and we end up with $329.76. Now we're going to call this a loss in purchasing power because inflation went up higher than the CD. So that money that was put away ends up with less buying power for the future. Another word that we often don't even pay that much of attention to because we haven't had it, but we could, given the impact of this economic crisis that we may be facing really soon. The opposite of inflation is called deflation. And that's when the general prices go down. Now, it's rare, but it does happen, and it can be a pretty negative thing. During the Great Depression, the price of goods and services fell sharply in deflationary spiral. People became worried about their savings and jobs, so people postponed purchases, demand fell, and sales and firms plummeted. Okay, so that takes care of 10.2. I'll continue on 10.3 on a separate video.